In the midst of the rock and roll phenomenon, a fascinating tale unfolds surrounding Elvis Presley's success in the UK. Different from his rise to fame in the US, particularly due to the absence of live performances and televised appearances, British fans experienced Elvis through record labels and airplay on the BBC. The Sun label, with its distinctive bright yellow logo, was synonymous with quality music. However, before Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins singles in 1956, the label faced a barrier in penetrating the UK market. Sun Records releases of Elvis Presley in 1954 out of 5 were not distributed in the UK at that time, ensuring they never graced the BBC airwaves. As these tracks eventually found their way onto albums and even as standalone singles in Britain, a curious phenomenon occurred: they were not advertised as older material. This meant that the British public did not hear Elvis Presley's early works in chronological order. The reason for this unexpected situation was rooted in internal politics within the record companies. The intricate web of these label politics contributed to the unique way in which Elvis Presley's music reached and impacted audiences on the other side of the Atlantic. As a result, British fans experienced his songs outside their original chronological context, adding another layer of mystery and allure to the already captivating figure of Elvis Presley. In the early days of the music industry, two major labels, HMV in the UK and Victor, later RCA Victor, in the US, shared an exclusive agreement that allowed them to have first dibs on each other's releases. HMV became part of the massive EMI empire. Decca, another British company that started by manufacturing gramophones, had ties with its American counterpart and released Bill Haley through their Brunswick label. The arrival of Elvis Presley and his groundbreaking single, Heartbreak Hotel, marked a turning point. Wally Ridley, the 43-year-old label manager at HMV, received the single from Steve Scholes of RCA Victor with a personal note insisting that he release it due to Elvis's imminent stardom. Despite not understanding the lyrics, Ridley released the song, but it initially faced harsh criticism in the UK. Radio stations such as Radio Luxembourg and the BBC refused to play Heartbreak Hotel, and the Daily Express called for HMV's head over releasing what they deemed rubbish. However, Cyril Stapleton, a bandleader, predicted that the record would still be a hit due to Elvis's rising popularity. The New Musical Express, despite taking advertising money from HMV, published a scathing review by Jeffrey Everett, who claimed he was giving up on singing if this was considered an example of it. Steve Race and Melody echoed these sentiments. One critic, writing for Melody Maker, expressed his disdain towards Elvis's first UK album, Rock and Roll, going as far as to question if Presley was originally a gospel singer. His review painted a picture of horror as he listened to the tracks, comparing them unfavorably to the suffering of a cow entangled in barbed wire. On the other hand, Dick Tatum, a show business writer planning to write a biography of Elvis Presley at the time, delivered a rather scathing review of A Heartbreak Hotel in Record Mirror. He dismissed the lyrics as inane and suggested that even without them, the song would still be ear-catching. The Gramophone, a more serious publication, consistently gave negative reviews to artists such as Elvis Presley, Bill Haley, and Little Richard, while extending praise to less controversial acts like Pat Boone and the Big Ben Banjo Band. John Oakland, a reviewer for the Gramophone, even went so far as to say he didn't see the point in detailing his thoughts on average rock and roll discs, since they all sounded alike to him. These varying reviews could lead one to believe that the entirety of the UK despised Elvis and his music. An outsider might even think it arrived from another world. However, the record industry seemed to have overlooked the fact that teenagers, a significant demographic, desired music tailored specifically for them. Despite these seemingly overwhelmingly negative reviews, there were young individuals who ardently embraced rock and roll. Author Ray Connolly, raised in Ormskirk, was one of those individuals. From the age of 15, he became obsessed with Elvis Presley and rock and roll music. Even before that, he had been captivated by another genre entirely. In A Tale of Musical Awakenings, a young individual recalls their life-altering encounter with rock and roll legend Elvis Presley. At the tender age of 12, they attended a Guy Mitchell concert at the Liverpool Empire, accompanied by their mother and aunt. However, it was not until hearing Elvis that their passion for music ignited in full force. They felt as though a veil had been lifted from their eyes, realizing that this genre was their life's calling. At the time, the perception of rock and roll fans was often dismissive, with many assuming they were less intelligent. But John Lennon and the individual in question held different views, embracing the power and energy that rock and roll represented. When attending university, the young person discovered a disdain for popular music among their peers, who considered it low culture and unintellectual. Instead, they favored trad jazz. However, fate intervened when the individual found employment writing about popular music. This led to serendipitous encounters with Elvis Presley and the Beatles, solidifying their luck and dedication to the genre. Martin Carthy, a folk singer, also saw rock and roll as a social revolution. At 14 or 15 years old, he was captivated by artists like Bill Haley, Lonnie Donegan, Elvis Presley, and Gene Vincent. For Carthy, these musicians symbolized the idea that ordinary people could create music without formal training. Terry Dean, a budding rock and roll singer, was working at HMV's record store in Oxford Street, London. One day, he encountered Elvis Presley's name on a new record and was intrigued. After playing Heartbreak Hotel repeatedly, he knew he wanted to emulate the sound. Wee Willie Harris also experienced a similar epiphany upon hearing an unfamiliar yet captivating high-pitched voice singing about a lost lover. Although initially mistaken for Johnny Ray, he soon discovered the true artist behind the powerful vocals, Elvis Presley. George Harrison, a young aspiring musician, had an encounter with Heartbreak Hotel that would forever alter his path. Cycling along one day, he happened upon the sound of the song wafting from a nearby house. The experience was transcendent. It was as if destiny itself had intervened to guide him towards this groundbreaking track. Others too were drawn into the web of Heartbreak Hotel. Paul McCartney recalled seeing an advertisement for the single in the ENMI and venturing into a record shop to listen through headphones in a booth. During that thrilling summer of 1956, a mysterious Pandora's box had been opened in the world of music. Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps record, Biop Lula, had shattered norms with its outrageous lyrics and a sound reminiscent of someone singing from the depths of a well. The track combined the nonsensical elements of Pat Boone's Tutti Frutti and the melancholic undertones of Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel. The character named Biop Lula, with her flying feet, was a far cry from any ordinary girl. And what were red blue jeans? This enigmatic record left many scratching their heads, struggling to comprehend its eccentricities. The ENMI reported that the BBC had taken an unusual stance against this audacious hit, banning its B-side, Woman Love. Some claimed Vincent's vocals came close to crossing a line with his lyrics, which were deemed a bit suggestive and difficult to understand by BBC standards. Despite the controversy, the record soared up the charts with Vincent making it into the top 30. His follow-up, Race with the Devil, pushed boundaries even further. This haunting track told a chilling tale of a hot rod gang member racing against Satan himself on Judgment Day. The lyrics were dark and edgy, painting a picture of Vincent's wild life and his determination to outrun the devil. As listeners tried to decipher these enigmatic songs and their meanings, they couldn't help but be captivated by Vincent's raw energy and unique sound. The world seemed to be on the cusp of a new musical era, one that embraced intrigue and pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in popular music. And amidst all the confusion and fascination, one thing was clear: more of this unconventional style was eagerly anticipated by those who had been drawn into the world of rock and roll's forbidden fruit. As the year drew to a close in 1956, a musical revolution was brewing in the UK, and its name was Little Richard. With his wild appearance and electrifying performances, he was set to make waves on British shores. His debut single, Rip It Up, had been leased to Decca and released under their London American label, but it was Bill Haley and his Comets who stole the limelight, taking the track into the top 10. However, Little Richard's time in the spotlight was fast approaching. His first US hits, Long Tall Sally and Tutti Frutti, were combined onto a single released early in 1957, which soared to number 3 on the charts. The frenetic energy of rock and roll had taken hold, and the asylum, or the music industry, was never the same again. In stark contrast to the more reserved piano playing at home, Little Richard's performance in Don't Knock the Rock was nothing short of outrageous. With his lascivious face, heavy makeup, greasy hair, high pompadour, and wild eyes, he put on a show that left audiences mesmerized. Hammering away at the baby grand with abandon, he finished with a dramatic bow as if he had just played a Chopin nocturne, an unforgettable sight for all who witnessed it. Meanwhile, the market was being flooded with new product from another legendary artist, Elvis Presley. With HMV releasing 6 of his singles in 1956, it wasn't due to marketing tactics but rather a result of company politics. Decca UK had previously released Capitol's product, but when they switched to EMI, they retaliated by wooing RCA and securing their own UK label. This meant that from June 1957, EMI would release as much Elvis material as the market could handle before the lease expired, and even a few months after it. The flood of Elvis singles, EPs, and LPs left the market saturated with his music, but all to the delight of fans. Some standout releases from HMV included Heartbreak Hotel No. 2, Blue Suede Shoes No. 9, and the lesser-known I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, which was released in July 1956. These artists and their music were ushering in a new era of rock and roll, captivating audiences and leaving an indelible mark on the history of popular music. The Lunatics had indeed taken over the asylum, but they did so with style, passion, and a sound that would echo through the decades. During the late 1950s, Elvis Presley dominated the UK music charts with numerous hits. In September 1956, Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel were released as a double-sided hit. Blue Moon, his first soundtrack to be issued in the UK, made it to the top 10 in November of the same year. Love Me Tender, held back for the UK opening of the film by the same name, entered the charts in December 1956. Despite a moderate sales performance due to an overabundance of Elvis releases, Mystery Train and Love Me followed in February and March of 1957. In April, Too Much and Playin' for Keeps entered the charts, while All Shook Up, with That's When Your Heartaches Begin as its B-side, became Elvis's first UK #1 single in June 1957. The Teddy Bear / Loving You single also made an impact, with both songs charting separately. Paralyzed and When My Blue Moon Turns to Gold Again were released in August 1957, followed by Party in October. By November 2nd of that year, Elvis had an impressive 7 titles in the UK Top 30, a testament to his widespread popularity. The third RCA single, Santa Bring My Baby Back to Me / Santa Claus Is Back in Town, was released in December 1957. I'm Left, You're Right, She's Gone / How Do You Think I Feel followed in January 1958, with Jailhouse Rock / Treat Me Nice becoming a chart-topping success in the following month. From then on, RCA controlled Elvis Presley's release schedule.